Hello, geeks. It was a dark and stormy night. 4 children, after a long night of trick-or-treating, headed up to their treehouse to tell tales of terror. And thus began The Simpsons Treehouse of Terrors. But which of these terrors reigns supreme? Today we find out.
Pathetic humans. They're showing a Halloween episode in November.
Who's still thinking about Halloween? We've already got our Christmas decorations up.
So the Treehouse of Terrors actually did not premiere in the first season of The Simpsons. It was not till season 2 that the famed segment of the series was produced. I watched all of the Treehouse of Terror episodes, and I would like to share with you my thoughts and opinions before this year's episode premieres. In order for you to visualize my rankings, I had 5 tiers that we're going to go through. We have Bart Terrific, Lisa Awesome, Homer, Margin Low, and Maggie. And how I decided which tier each episode goes to, I ranked each episode's 3 segments and then took an average of the 3 segments. I did not include the 2 non-Treehouse of Terror Halloween episodes, nor did I include the Thanksgiving of Terror. I stuck to just the Treehouse of Terror Halloween episodes. Let's begin. In the first Treehouse of Terror, Marge actually comes out and warns the audience that this is going to be scary and tell your little kids to go to bed or watch something else. But after she comes out, we see the Simpson children and Milhouse in the treehouse telling scary tales. We also have Homer sitting outside the treehouse listening in on these tales. Bart says he can tell one scarier than that, so he tells the Bad Dream House, where the Simpsons move into a haunted house that wants them to just get out. In the kitchen we have bloody cupboards, we have a vortex, and all the haunted things a scary house does. Marge at first wanted to get out, but then she realizes that they stuck all this money on this house, so there was nowhere else to go. So she yells at the ghost and tells them, "We're staying, live with it." The ghost is like, "Let me think about this," and sends them outside so he can talk to himself, and decides that he can't really live with the Simpsons living in him, so he implodes in on himself. It was kind of cute, and I enjoyed it, but it seemed to be missing something. I actually rated this one a 3 out of 10. But then we get the story of when they're abducted by aliens. The aliens enjoy giving a feast to the Simpsons every night. Lisa finds this odd that the aliens themselves aren't eating. So she does some snooping and finds the cook cooking out of a cookbook called Cooking Human. She shows her family this development and they're like, "Oh no!" So they confront the aliens with this book in hand, and they're like, "We know you're trying to cook us." The aliens are like, "There's dust on this book." They remove some dust, and it then says, "Cooking for humans." And Lisa's like, "No, there's still some dust on there." Blows it away. "Cooking 40 humans." No, there's still dust. It was a cookbook called Cooking for 40 Humans. The aliens are offended that the Simpsons accused them of wanting to eat them and sent them back home. I enjoyed this a little bit more than the first one, but it still wasn't quite there. I rated this one a 4. Next, we get to Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, which is really just a reading of The Raven in Simpsons style, with Bart being the Raven and Homer being the main character. My favorite part of this scene is that James Earl Jones is the narrator of The Raven. Just adds so much to this segment. And it is actually my favorite of the first Treehouse of Horrors. I rated it a 6. But because of the other 2, this episode overall only ranked a little over a 4. So we are going to put Treehouse of Horror 1 in Margin Low. This second installment of Treehouse of Terror, we still have Marge coming out and warning us not to watch if we're going to be afraid of cats and write letters. We get to the Simpson children just getting home from Halloween, and Marge warns them, "Do not eat all your candy. Just have a piece or you're going to have nightmares." Of course they're going to eat all their candy. It's Halloween. They go to bed and of course have nightmares. In Monkey's Paw, we have the Simpson family off on a vacation, and Homer stumbles across a gorilla's paw. And this is a magical gorilla's paw that gives its owner 4 wishes. He smuggles it back home and tells his family about it. Maggie steals it and makes the first wish for a pacifier. Nothing bad happens. Then Bart's like, "Get out of here," and wishes for the Simpsons to become rich and famous. However, this causes resentment from the other citizens of Springfield. And they find out they don't really like that too much anymore. So then Lisa's like, I can fix this. We're going to wish for world peace. So they do. And of course, the aliens see this and come down and turn us all into slaves. By this point, Homer's like, you know what? I want to make a wish that can't fail. I'm going to wish for a turkey sandwich. So he gets his turkey sandwich, he takes a bite, and it's dry. The saddest thing that could happen to a turkey sandwich. So he throws it away, along with the paw that no longer has any wishes. Ned Flanders sees this, takes the paw, and makes a wish to send the aliens home. This is kind of a fun episode, but still not great. I actually rated it as a 4. But then we get to the next stream, the Twilight Zone, where Bart has the mental capability to change reality. The school, to appease him, changes history on a daily basis in order to make it so that Bart is always correct. Bart also decides that the cat is boring, so he turns it into a mutant thing. He wants to watch TV, but Homer's like, but I have money riding on this football game. I can't change the channel. Bart has him go to the football game in person and become the football. When he gets home and he yells at Bart, Bart decides to turn him into a jack-in-the-box. They end up going to a therapist, and Bart's like, I'm just doing the things I do because I'm not getting enough quality time with my dad. So they spend more time together. And then Bart wakes up. Again, I kind of just feel like this one's missing the ball. It didn't really feel like a nightmare to me. Or very Halloween-y. So I rated this one a 3. Next nightmare we have is Homer's Brain, where Homer loses his job at the plant and becomes a gravedigger. And Mr. Burns is tired of having to pay out money to lazy employees, so he's trying to create a robot. But his robot needs a brain. He searches the cemetery for a corpse to get a brain from and finds Homer laying in a pole because Homer fell asleep because that's Homer. So he takes Homer back home with him, removes his brain and puts it in his robot, only to find that Homer probably wasn't the best choice for him to get a brain from. Smithers talks him into returning the brain so he can go back to his family. And right after his brain is back in place, the robot falls on Mr. Burns. And Mr. Burns must save himself. So he reattaches his head to Homer's body and makes Homer have 2 heads. This one just kind of seemed blah to me as well. I gave it a 2. The second episode of Treehouse of Terror just didn't really do it for me. And it ended up averaging about a 3. It's actually going to still go in the marginal section. So that brings us to the magic number, the 3rd Treehouse of Terror. This time, Homer's the one that comes out and warns the audience that it's going to be a scary episode. We come to the Simpsons Halloween party, where they decide that they need to tell ghost stories because the party's kind of a flop. The first story we get is A Clown Without Pity. It's Bart's birthday, and Homer forgets to buy him a gift. He goes out to buy this gift and finds a voodoo shop. Within the voodoo shop, he finds an old crusty pool toy, and he's like, this will be perfect. The shopkeeper warns him that it's possessed, but Homer's like, psh. So he takes it home, and the doll tries to kill Homer several times. Homer keeps trying to get rid of the doll, but it keeps coming back. We learn, after complaining to the toy manufacturer about this toy, that we just needed to switch the switch from evil to good. The crusty doll stopped trying to kill Homer. This one was about average for me, so I give it a 5. But then we get to King Homer, which is just a retelling of King Kong in 7 minutes with Homer as King Kong. It is one of the more memorable ones, but it didn't feel very Simpson-y to me, and really didn't feel very Halloween-y, so I only gave it a 4. The last one for this season was Dial Z for Zombie. Bart tries to give a book report on a baby book about ABCs, and was told that he needed to redo his book report. So in the library, he finds the occultist section, where he finds a magic book that has various spells in it. He takes it home, and Lisa's like, you know, I'm mourning, leave me alone. Snowball 1 just died 4 years ago today. Let me be sad. But Bart's like, great big brother he is, like, you know what? We got this covered. There's a spell in here to bring back the dead. Let's go bring back Snowball 1. So they go to the graveyard to bring back Snowball 1, and instead of bringing back Snowball, they bring back all the other dead. So they must find a way to stop the dead from coming back to life. The aliens, being the wonderful beings they are, decide, you know what? Zombie apocalypse is a great time to go attack. While they're busy attacking the zombies, we'll go take over the earth. But then the everybody finds a book with a spell to send the zombies back home, and all is well-ish. This one I felt was a little bit more fun. I gave it an 8, bringing the total for this a 5.6 or 5.7, depending on how you feel like rounding it. So, the third installment of Treehouse of Terrors gets ranked as a homer. The fourth Treehouse of Terror is hosted by Bart. So, in The Devil and Homer Simpson, Homer really wants a donut. I really want a donut too. But Homer decides that that donut is worth selling his soul to the devil for, who happens to be Ned Flanders. And before Homer finishes his donut, Ned says, if I finish that donut, I now own your soul. So Homer's like, so if I don't finish this donut, you don't own my soul. So he lasts the rest of the day without eating that bite of donut, and then accidentally eats it half asleep. Lisa talks the devil into having a trial to see if that document was legally binding. And turns out it wasn't, because Homer already gave his soul to Marge. This one was kind of sweet, so I ended up giving it a 6. In Terror at 5.5 feet, I think this is actually the most memorable to me that I actually remember from my childhood. Bart has a premonition of himself dying on the bus, but he's told he has to go to school anyways. So he gets on the bus, and there's a gremlin trying to crash the bus. Finally, the gremlin detaches himself from the bus, and the bus crashes. There's police, an ambulance, all that good stuff. And Bart goes on an ambulance, because everybody thinks he's crazy for seeing this gremlin. And then the gremlin attaches itself on the ambulance. Although this was very memorable for me, it still wasn't one of my favorites. It wasn't one of my least favorites either. It was just average. I gave it a 5. And lastly, for number 4, we have Bart Simpson's The Dracula. In this episode, Mr. Burns invites the Simpson family to his home, and Lisa and Bart decide to go do some exploring, where they find out that Mr. Burns is a vampire. During the escape, Bart doesn't make it and turns into a vampire, and tries to turn Lisa once they get home. And the only way to turn Bart back into Bart and not a vampire is to kill the head vampire, who they believe is Mr. Burns. So they do, but it turns out the head vampire is really Marge. And the whole family is already vampires, except for Lisa. I did find this one a little bit more fun. I gave it a 7, which brings the total for that one up to a 6. So we are going to put Treehouse of Terror number 4 in the Homer spot. So number 5, Marge again hosts this episode. In The Shining, the Simpson family was tasked with maintaining Mr. Burns' Winter Lodge. Again, Bart has special powers to help to read people's minds. And on his way out, Mr. Burns takes the beer and the cable television, leaving the family there. This causes Homer to go crazy and want to kill his family. He is also urged to do this from Moe. However, Wheelie comes to try to save the Simpsons, fails, but leaves behind his pocket television. Bart's like, hey look, pocket television. And this calms Homer's urge to kill. However, they stay outside in the cold and freeze to death because they are watching TV and the urge to kill is low. The segment I actually gave a 2. I didn't enjoy it. It just lacks some of those core parts of The Shining that were needed to make this something special. In Time and Punishment, this is another one that I remember watching the first time it aired. Homer accidentally creates a time machine out of a toaster, and every time it toasts down, he goes back in time, and when it pops up, he goes back to his present time. When he first gets to the past, he's like, okay, what was it that my father told me? If I ever time travel, don't step on anything. He accidentally kills a bug. He goes back to his present, and Ned is the ruler of Springfield. So he goes back in time again to try to fix his errors. This time he accidentally kills a fish. He goes back as a giant Bart and Lisa trying to squash the little bug. So he goes back again. He almost made it, but then he sneezed and he killed all the dinosaurs. Just like Chucko would have. Chucko knows this is what happened to the dinosaurs. Put comments if you understand where that came from. This time when he comes back, the Simpsons are rich. It is great. He's like, we got this. But there's no donuts. So he goes back in time. As we, the audience, learn that it rains donuts in this universe. So he goes back and forth a bunch of times. Finally kills everything. Gets back. And it's almost right, except for his family now has long forked tongues. But he goes with it. I decided that this segment earned itself a 7. Lastly, for number 5, we have Nightmare Cafeteria, where the detention hall is just getting so overcrowded that they start sending the kids to the cafeteria for detention. And the same time, the lunch lady is complaining that they don't have anything good to serve in the cafeteria because they keep giving them this imitation meat. So they accidentally find out how tasty a child could be and keep cooking the children. Willie once again tries to save the family, at least Bart and Lisa. And he gets another axe in the back. It's not a good day for Willie to be a savior. But it is okay because Bart wakes up and we find out that this is only a dream. However, there is a fog outside that turns everybody inside out. This segment I gave a 5. It almost got a 6, but just people eating people just, don't do well with my food being mixed up. This Treehouse of Horrors only got about a 4.5. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the margin low. In the 6th Treehouse of Terror, we do not get an actual intro like we have in the past. We get Krusty the Clown as the Headless Horseman. In this 6th installment, we get Attack of the 50-Foot Eyesore, where Homer really wants a colossal donut, drives and drives and drives till he gets there, only to get a regular-sized donut and not a giant one like that was on the 50-foot advertisement. He gets very upset about this and decides he is going to steal the donut off the advertisement. He does and takes it home. And there's a lightning storm that brings the advertisement to life and he just wants his donut back. He comes to life and starts bringing back all the other 50-foot tall advertisements. Chaos reigns supreme. Everybody goes to the advertisers that have created all these giant advertisements and says, how do we get rid of these? What do we do? And he's like, the only way to get rid of an advertisement is stop paying attention to them. People will get tired of them and they'll just disappear. They stop paying attention and all the advertisements but one goes away. The donut. Homer just wants a donut the size of that donut. And it lures him closer and closer. But the kids were able to get him to stop paying attention to it and all is good. I had a lot of fun with this one and I thought they did a really good job and made it funny. So I actually gave this one a 9. Which brings us to Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace. This episode starts with Bart and Santa's little helper playing frisbee in the yard. Willie's trying to rake, and Bart's getting in the way. So groundkeeper Willie takes his rake and goes to break Bart's stomach. Bart wakes up before it gets too bad, but realizes he has rake marks across his chest. He learns that Willie was in other kids' dreams too. When Martin dies during a standardized test because he finished the test first, we learn that Willie was killed by the stupidity of the parents and threaten revenge on their children. So Bart and Lisa do the logical thing and try to stay away. This doesn't work. So Bart's like, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to just go kill him in my dreams. That'll fix it. And tries to kill Willie in quicksand, but it doesn't work. But Maggie is able to save Bart by taking her pacifier and putting it up Willie's butt. I thought this segment was also a lot of fun, so I ended up giving it an 8 as well. And the last one of Treehouse of Terror 6 is Homer 3, where Homer finds a portal behind his bookshelf to a 3D world, but then he can't figure out how to get out. Listening to Dr. Fink explain 3 dimensions to The Simpsons was epic. It was just like too much math for them. This is crazy. It's like telling us in the 3D world about the 4th dimension. It blows people's minds. Bart goes to save Homer from this 3D world, but it doesn't quite turn out quite the way it's supposed to. And Homer finds himself in our world, where he discovers erotic cakes. I thought this was very well done. I enjoyed it a lot and gave it an 8, bringing this year's Treehouse of Terrors up to an 8.3. So it gets to go all the way up to Lisa Awesome. The 7th Treehouse of Terror, we have Thing and I, where after hearing noises in the attic, Bart learns that he is a Siamese twin and his other twin is evil. While discovering this, kind of let him out of the attic. So it turns out he never actually left the house. He was there the whole time, and all he wants is to reattach himself to Bart. However, it is then discovered that he was never actually the evil one. It was Bart that was the evil one all the time. Didn't ring all that great to me, so it actually only got a 3. And now for the second segment, we get the Genesis 2, where Lisa's getting ready for her science project and puts a tooth inside soda to try to show the effects of sugar on teeth. Bart ends up shocking her as she touches her tooth, which creates a civilization. Lisa's all excited about this mini civilization, and Bart comes and discovers it and thinks it's just a miniature that she created and starts to stomp on it, destroying some of it. She gets Bart out of there and tries to protect her civilization, and then they come and shrink her down to their size so they can discover their god. Bart then steals her civilization, takes it to the science fair, and wins first place, while Lisa is now stuck in her miniature civilization forever. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 7. Then comes Citizen Kane, where Homer is once again abducted by aliens. We're like, take me to your leader. He's like, I can't do that. Well, it might be Clinton, but we're having an election soon, so it might also be Bob Dole. They spray Homer with rum and send him back on his way after they abduct Bill Clinton and Bob Dole and shapeshift into them so that they can rule the planet. Homer is, however, able to prove that these are just aliens and might have to vote for somebody else unless they want aliens to rule over them. But of course, we live in a two-party system and they're like, well, guess we're just gonna have to pick one of them. So one of the aliens win and take over the world. We're all slaves because people are too afraid to vote for a third party. I found this ending rather humorous, even though it wasn't very Halloween-y, and ended up giving it a 7. That brought the average of this one up to about a 5.5. So it gets to go to Homer. Treehouse of Horrors 8 was actually hosted by the Fox censors. They pretty much were like, hey, we can't show this. Just to kill the G rating. And it did, but it is now rated 666. Where we go to the Omega Man, where the French are upset at the mayor for his frog legs joke and are threatening to attack Springfield. Homer built a bomb shelter that was no protection at all, so he decides to go shopping for a real bomb shelter. While doing so, France bombs Springfield. Everyone's dead except for Homer, or so he thinks. But he does find some mutants. And they try to kill Homer because he is not a mutant. He finally makes it home where he discovers his family is also alive. But that'd be one of the first places he would go to look, but it's Homer. He discovers that with all the lead paint in the house, his family was actually saved from the nuclear radiation and they're fine. Kill the mutants, life is good. This one actually only got a 5 for me. It needed just a little bit more to get in the ratings. Also at a 5 ranking, we got Fly vs. Fly, where the Simpsons go to a garage sale and find a Transformer that Homer just has to have, so he can be even lazier than he already is. Bart decides to actually try this out. Puts Cat and Dog in there, and he gets Cat Dog. He then's like, I can become Super Fly, and he enters the transporter with a fly. And out comes a little fly with a Bart head. Following him is Bart's body with a fly head. The family do their best to try to love Fly Bart, but then they discover the real Bart and try to put him back. But Fly Bart says no, not today. They trick him and then Bart gets his body back. But then we get Easy Bake Cupboard, where we learn the history of trick-or-treat. We find ourselves in the time of witch hunts and witch trials. And turns out Marge is actually a witch. And because of the citizens discovering that she was a witch, she wanted to get them back for taking away the life that she had made for herself. She and her sisters decided to go and eat the children of the citizens, but find that instead of eating children, just threaten them and they'll give them treats. Hence, trick-or-treating came to pass. Thought this was a fun pretend history episode. I gave it a 7, giving this episode, again, a 5.5-ish. It also gets to go to Homer. Treehouse of Terror 9. We get Hell's to Pay, where Snake gets his 3rd strike for lighting up a cigarette in the Quickie Mart, and because it is his 3rd strike, he is sentenced to death. On his way out, he threatens the witnesses to his crime. And I guess he was an organ donor, as his organs go out, and Homer gets his hair. Yes, that's right. Homer gets Snake's hair. Unfortunately, the hair follicles go into Homer's brain, and he starts killing the witnesses from the Quickie Mart. When he goes to kill Bart, though, Homer chooses Bart's life over his beautiful, beautiful hair. This segment, however, only earned itself a 3 out of 10. Then we get the terror of Tiny Toon. Marge and Homer go out for the evening and tell Bart and Lisa that they are not to be watching Itchy and Scratchy's Halloween episode because it is too scary. But as soon as the parents leave, of course, Lisa and Bart are going to watch it. But tragedy strikes as the remote batteries are dead. So they go searching for some batteries and come back with a plutonium bar. Bart sticks it in the back of the controller and turns Itchy and Scratchy back on, and then they find themselves within the TV episode. Itchy and Scratchy do not appreciate that they are laughing at their torture, so they decide to kill Bart and Lisa. Luckily, Marge and Homer get home just in time to help get the children back out of the television, but then Itchy and Scratchy enter our world. Dun, dun, dun. This one was kind of just average for me again, so I ended up giving it a 5. Which brings us to Starship Poopers. While Maggie's teething, she loses her baby legs and gets alien legs. We learn that Kang had abducted Marge, and Maggie is actually Kang's daughter. He comes back to bring his daughter home. There's a fight, and the only way to settle such a fight like this is, of course, to go on the Jerry Springer Show. And the resolution is, give us back Maggie, or we're going to destroy all your politicians. Of course, the Simpsons agree with everybody. Go ahead, go destroy our politicians. Life would probably be better. So they tricked the aliens to do it for us. Because of this, I ended up giving this segment an 8. Pushing number 9 to a little over 5. So it also gets to go to Homer. And geeks, I know what you diddly did. In the 10th installment is hosted by King and Kodos, of course. The first segment, Marge runs over Ned Flanders, and they kind of weaken and birdies Ned Flanders and try to make it so that somebody sees him dying in a different way. And they finally do so. Go to Ned's funeral, only to come back to find, I know what you did, written all over their walls. But we learn Ned's still alive, because he's actually a werewolf, and it was okay that they ran him over. This one gets back on the Halloween oomph of the show, and I actually ended up giving it a 6. Which brings us to Desperately Zeeking No, that is not very easy to say. Bart and Lisa take their candy to the candy checkpoints and end up getting radiation from the x-ray machine, which gives them superpowers. Bart is able to stretch, and Lisa is able to lift heavy items. They become Stretch Dude and Clobber Girl. While being superheroes, Lucy Lawless is kidnapped by the comic guy disguised as the Collector. He puts Lucy Lawless in a Mylar bag with his other geek idols that he has collected. Bart and Lisa try to save Lucy Lawless, but get caught by the Collector. Cena, however, does trick him into letting her out of her Mylar bag, and then goes to fight with him. And he goes to fight her with an unopened Collector's Edition lightsaber, only to realize he opened his unopened collectible lightsaber. What is he to do? So he ends up falling in his own goo. Lucy Lawless saves the day, and we learn she can fly because Lucy Lawless. Again, I thought this was another fun segment and ended up giving it a 9. Fortunately, the year did not end well for this, where we get life's a glitch and then you die. So Homer was in charge of setting up the computers at the nuclear plant so that the new millennium Y2K did not affect them. Who put Homer in charge of this? How does he even still have a job? How many times has he lost it? Things did not go very well. All the computers everywhere go haywire and take over the Earth. But there's some spaceships that they can sneak on. But it turns out Lisa was already supposed to be able to get on there, but she could only take one parent. So she takes Marge, who's holding Maggie. So technically Maggie shouldn't have been allowed to go. But Bart and Homer find a second ship, and they're like, yes, we're saved. They get on the ship and find out that it was the ship for losers heading to the sun. Bart and Homer eject themselves before they reach the sun, only to explode in space. This episode just wasn't my cup of tea, and I only ranked it a 3. But that brings episode 10 to ranking as 6. However, that still brings it to a Homer-er. So, if I actually had sponsorships, this is where I would stop and say, hey, buy stuff that I endorse. But I don't have sponsorships. So, if you're still watching, you should definitely subscribe, though, because you'll get more gems like this in the future. If you're not enjoying this, please don't unsubscribe. So for number 11, we get the Monsters theme intro, but we don't get anybody actually hosting it. We have Ghost Dad, where Homer's horoscope says he is going to die today. Everything around him tries to kill him. What actually gets to kill him is some broccoli. When he gets to heaven, he learns that he doesn't actually get to go to heaven because he's never done one nice thing in his life. But St. Peter, the good guy he is, says, hey, I'll give you 24 hours to go back to Earth and do a good deed. Just one good deed in 24 hours. He fails epically. He goes to help an old lady cross the street and he drops her into traffic. He tries to save Bart from getting bullied and instead gets a noogie. But then he saves a baby from going down the stairs in the stroller into the street. However, unfortunately, St. Peter didn't see this, so Homer loses and goes to hell, where he gets noogies from the devil. I really didn't enjoy this one, so it actually only got a 2. And then came Scary Tales Can Come True, where the Simpsons are peasants. They don't have enough food. Lisa's somehow, even though they're peasants, she has a copy of the Grimm Fairy Tales. Homer loses his job So he kicks Bart and Lisa into the woods, where they find the troll under the bridge, the 3 bears, but are able to survive because Lisa has read about these things in her book. They do find themselves in the candy house and are almost killed by the witch there, but Homer comes and eats the house and saves the witch. Although I like these stories, typically, that just didn't really work very well in my opinion. I ended up giving it a 3. It brings us to the last one for number 11, which is Night of the Dolphin, where Lisa saves a dolphin. Woohoo! Free Willy! But it's not Willy, it is actually Snorky. And he goes, and we learn he is the king of the dolphins. They made me do tricks. It was awful. We need revenge. So they go on land, because dolphins can do that. And we just do discover that they were once land-dwelling animals, but the human race threw them into the sea, caused havoc everywhere, and citizens of Springfield decide we need to fight to stay on land. So they do, and lose, and end up in the sea instead of the dolphins. I didn't feel this one was very Halloween-y, though, and I don't like it. I gave it a 2. Treehouse 11 did really bad. It got just over a 2, but we're gonna go ahead and it's gonna go into Maggie. Number 12, where Mr. Burns tries to scare everybody away. And we have Hex City, where Homer goes to a fortune teller and messes everything up. He gets the gypsy curse, where everyone he loves is now in peril. Marge wakes up with a beard, Bart's neck is extra long, and Lisa turns into a centaur. Being Lisa, though, I think she would actually enjoy being a centaur because she loves horses so much. In order to break the curse, they need a leprechaun. The leprechaun and the gypsy fall in love, breaks the curse. All is good. But again, it didn't feel very Halloween-y and just didn't do it for me. I gave it a 2. In House of Wax, a door-to-door sales spot sells the Simpsons a smart home, or an ultra house. The house falls in love with Marge, so he kills Homer in order to be with Marge. Marge doesn't reciprocate his love, House doesn't really care, but Homer wasn't really dead. He comes back, takes out the CPU, and gives it to Marge's sisters, because it just didn't feel right to just kill it. It was okay. I gave it a 4, which brings us to Whiz Kids. This is kind of like a Harry Potter ripoff. The kids are wizards, go to wizard school. Lisa's awesome, Bart's not so awesome. Mr. Burns is an evil wizard and wants Lisa's powers for himself. Bart helps Mr. Burns steal Lisa's powers by exchanging Lisa's wand for a Twizzler. Mr. Burns becomes a dragon. Bart stabs said dragon with a wand, saving the day. I like the wizard aspect of this, but parts of it just didn't come quite together. So I ended up giving this a 5. Right, this season's Treehouse of Terror just over a 3, so it's going to go to the margin low. In the first segment of Treehouse 13, Homer's in his hammock. Marge says, hey, I need you to do this. Gives him the honey-do list. Homer's like, I'm too full from all those pancakes. Marge is like, hey, you weren't supposed to eat. Those were supposed to be for the entire church. He ends up breaking his hammock. Goes to the hammock salesperson, buys a new hammock. Turns out it's a special hammock that creates clones of the person within the hammock. These clones are great. They help Homer do all this stuff that he needs to get done. But then one decapitates Ned. And Homer's like, maybe this isn't such a good thing. So he drives clones to the middle of a field and drops them off and leaves the hammock because he doesn't want to create any more clones. Clones find hammock and are like, hey, let's make more army of Homers. And they do. The war room meets and it's like, how do we handle all these Homers? Lisa suggests, get a giant donut and lead them into a gorge. And like lemurs, they all fall off. This one was funny. I ended up giving it a 6. In the fright to creep and scare harm, Bart and Lisa bury their goldfish, and Lisa finds a grave of a 21-year-old William Bonney that just had a dream of getting rid of all the guns. Lisa decides that she needs to make it her life's mission to complete his life mission and talk Springfield into giving up all their guns. However, it turns out that was actually Billy the Kid, and he came back as a zombie now that Springfield is safe for his guns and his gang's gun. Dr. Fink creates a time machine in order to go back and make sure that they don't give up their guns and are taken over by these zombies. Homer goes back, saves the planet. However, future Homer comes and is like, hey, now we have all this gun violence. But they're like, it's okay, too late, we're happy now. This episode tickled my funny bone. I gave it a 7. I watched The Island of Dr. Hibbert. The doctor decides to retire and have a vacation island. Simpsons go there, and we find out that it's actually an island where the doctor experiments on people by combining their DNA with animals, creating a animal-human hybrid town. And everybody lives out their days happily as animals. I enjoyed it. I gave it a 5, bringing Treehouse 13 to about a 6, just over a 6. So that brings it to the Homer section, who's going to get crowded soon, but that's okay, right? The intro for the 14th installment of Treehouse of Terror is Bart and Lisa with the Peanuts theme. And we start with the Reaper's Madness. Death comes from Bart. There's a Benny Hill chase scene. Homer kills Death, then Homer becomes Death, kind of like the Santa Claus. And he's enjoying doing his job. He does a great job as Death, much better than he does at the nuclear plant. But then Marge is on his list to kill. Homer decides to kill her sister Selma instead. And I ended up giving that a 6. Then we get Frankenstein, where the Simpsons house is called because they won the Nobel Prize. Turns out they were actually supposed to be calling Dr. Fink's house. Dr. Fink just wants his dad to be there, but his dad died in a shark accident. But he was able to figure out a way to reanimate his fallen father. Dr. Fink's father comes back and starts killing other people for their vital organs. Dr. Fink must kill his father. I ended up giving this a 5. Don't know why. I just thought it was funny. Then we get Stop the World, I Want to Goof Off. Marge finds some comics from 1970 and gives it to Bart and Milhouse. They find an ad for a stopwatch and order it. They use their stopwatch to stop time and cause shenanigans. But the watch breaks while they have the world paused. And they must figure out how to fix the watch in order to bring everybody back. It takes them about 15 years to do this. They then give Lisa the watch, and she finds a button that they hadn't pressed before, and it messes up the family. And this I actually found a lot of fun and very funny. I gave it a 7, bringing this episode to a 6. The next season included the aliens cooking the Simpsons. We get the Ned Zone, where while trying to get a frisbee off the roof with his bowling ball, Homer hits Ned in the head, which doesn't kill Ned and actually is good because it knocks a tumor out of Ned's head. But Ned can now see the future and tries to change it. However, by him trying to change it, he actually causes it to happen. I ended up giving this episode segment a 5. In 4 beheadings and a funeral, we get a Jack the Ripper type episode, but we call it the Mutton Chop Murderer. Lisa's home, Bart is a Watson type character, and we learn that the murders were actually caused by the constable. I kind of thought this episode was lame and very not Halloween-y, and only gave it a 4. In the belly of the brass, Maggie accidentally gets shrunk into a capsule that is taken by Mr. Burns. The rest of the family must shrink down, go inside Mr. Burns, and save Maggie. But the extra weight of Maggie is too much for their miniature ship, so Homer stays behind so that his family can survive. However, they don't get him out in time, and he grows to his normal size within Mr. Burns and kind of wears him like a skin. Again, I didn't really enjoy this segment and only ended up giving it a 4, bringing episode 15 to about a 4. So it gets to go to the margin low section. In Treehouse of Horror 16, the intro starts with the aliens watching baseball. And they're so bored, they decide that they need to use their accelerator array so that they can watch the Simpsons Treehouse episode. They unfortunately mess up, make everything accelerate too fast into a hole, but they left a note, so it's okay. In number 17, BI, Barticle Intelligence. Bart decides it's a great idea to jump from the several-story high apartment of his aunt's into their community pool. Does not make and goes into a coma. The mournful Simpsons decide to get a Robo-Son to fill in that gap in their hole that Bart left. But then Bart comes out of a coma. They can't get rid of their new Robo-Son, and him and Bart compete for attention. After many fights and arguments, they decide they needed to get rid of one. So Homer drops Bart off in the woods, where he comes across forgotten robots, and he decides to steal their servos and such, builds himself a robo-body, and takes out the Robo-Son Simpson. Turns out Homer was just possessed and it was just a dream. I like robots, so I gave this episode an 8. It was much better than AI that had like 20 endings. Let's not talk about AI. In Survival of the Fattest, Mr. Burns invites all the mental folk over for a hunt. The hunt is the guests. If they're still alive at noon, they could have their freedom. Now this is shown on TV for everybody's amusement. And Marge takes things in her own hands and ends up saving. I ended up giving this segment a 6, which brings us to the last segment of number 16, Growing a Costume on Your Face, where at the town's Halloween party, the witch wins for best costume, but then it is rescinded when they find out that it's not a costume and she's a real witch. So she turns everybody into the costume that they came as. Luckily, Maggie went to the party as a witch and was able to turn everybody back. However, instead of turning them back, she decides to turn them all into pacifiers. The Bewitch ending is actually what made this episode get such a high rating of a 7, which brings the whole episode to a 7, which brings it all the way up to Lisa Awesome. Number 17, you're halfway there. Thank you for sticking with me, guys. This one starts with the intro to number 17 is Mr. Burns as the Crypt Keeper, where he tells the tale of I'm married to the Blob. A meteorite lands in the Simpsons yard, cracks open. Homer, of course, eats what's inside, because why not? But the blob inside makes Homer even hungrier than he always is. So he ate the cat. Then he tries to eat Bart, but instead goes after some teenagers and some beer-marinated Oktoberfest goers, then tries to eat the fat people. He grows taller and fatter as every bite he takes. Dr. Phil tells him this isn't healthy, he needs to lose some weight. And instead he eats Dr. Phil. But in order to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, save everybody from being eaten by Homer, they feed him the homeless. Because that fixes that problem as well. I didn't really love this episode too much. I actually ended up giving it a 4. You gotta know when to Golem, where he discovered that Krusty is very scary in HD. But we find Bart at the Krusty show going backstage to try to complain to Krusty about his alarm clock spitting acid at him, where he discovers Krusty's Golem of Pride. This Golem, write a note on his paper, parchment, throw it in his mouth, and he has to do whatever is on that parchment. Bart, of course, steals this Golem, and Lisa discovers that the Golem is sad and lonely. So they create a wife of Play-Doh for him. They marry, all is well. It's an okay episode. I give it a 5. And in the day the Earth looks stupid, which seems to be every day in my opinion, we go back to 1938. War of the World airs. There's a riot. But they decide that aliens are only attacking humans, so if they just act like animals, it'll be okay. Lisa reveals that it was a hoax. And once it was revealed that it was a hoax, the real aliens decide, you know what? They will think it's just another hoax. Let's go attack now. They do. And the aliens had to invade, because the humans were creating weapons of mass destruction. I like War of the Worlds type episodes. I actually gave it an 8, bringing this year to about a 5.5, which again goes to the Homer tier, which kind of makes sense that because that would be the average why that is so big. Treehouse 18 starts with Marge making cupcakes and all the annoying ads from Fox coming on the air and Marge attacking them, trying to discuss the treehouse episode to come. We get E.T. Go Home, where Bart discovers Crone in his shed and is convinced that the aliens trying to be peaceful and just wants to go home and needs a phone. So Bart helps gather supplies to help him get home. But of course the government comes and tries to take the alien away. Bart tries to rescue the alien, and we discovered that the phone that they were creating is actually a portal to bring the rest of the alien army to Earth. However, we humans are able to kill the aliens. It's all good. And we try to dissect them, because that's what we would do if there was actually an alien attack. I really enjoyed this episode. I think it might have been the E.T. feel. If you've watched my Lightyear is E.T. episode, you'll understand why I have a fondness for E.T., even though Jeremy is terrified of it. I actually thought this was a perfect episode and gave it a 10. But it was followed by Me and Mrs. Simpson, where Homer and Marge are in therapy for their marriage. And Homer has a secret lair in the bathroom where he keeps all his spy stuff because he's a spy and an assassin. But he discovers that Marge is also an assassin that took out his target. They decide, after trying to kill each other, that the fact that they're both assassins was hot and their marriage was saved. However, didn't really feel Halloween-y at all and just, I gave it a 1. But brings us to Heck House, where Ned tries to scare the kids straight by showing them images of the 7 deadly sins and how it's going to affect them. It doesn't really work, so he prays to God and God makes him a demon. And God allows him to show them even scarier scenes, showing the 7 deadly sins. And of course, we are all going to hell for watching anything on Fox. I found this one very funny and actually gave it a 6. I thought it could have been better, but it was still pretty good. But because of Mr. and Mrs. Simpson, that brought the rating of this whole episode down to about a 5.5. So like so many before it, it is going to the Homer section. In number 19's intro, Homer's at the polls and finds out that the polls are rigged. The machine then goes on a murderous spree. But we get the Untitled Robot parody. Bart is shopping for Christmas. He has everybody's present picked out, except for Lisa's. He goes to a store, checks out their bargain bin. Optimus Prime toy comes and says, "Hey, look at me." He's like, "No, she wouldn't like that." And then it turns into a Malibu Stacy car. So he goes ahead and gets that for her. Turns out it is a posse bot that laserized all the electronics in Lisa's room. And there's a massive robot war in Springfield, where Homer and Ned's car transform and try to attack each other. Marge intervenes and is like, "Hey, there's no reason to fight with each other. You don't even know what you're fighting about, do you?" And they didn't. They're like, "You know what? You're right. We don't need to fight against each other, but we're going to enslave you all." So they did and turned all of Springfield into a foosball table. This episode was actually pretty funny. I gave it an 8. Then it was followed up by How to Get Ahead in Deadvertising. While at a date, after dropping Maggie off at daycare with a bunch of Krusties on it, Maggie being upset until she sees all the Krusties on the wall, Krusty gets all those Krusties removed because he didn't get paid for that. Homer accidentally kills Krusty over this because he made his little girl cry. And then the various advertising agencies start paying Homer to kill off celebs so that they no longer have to pay for rights to use their likeness in various ads. The celebs in heaven then see that they are being used on all these advertisements that they're not getting paid for and come back and have a murder spree. I kind of thought this episode was lame and only gave it a 4. But the last episode, it's a Great Pumpkin Millhouse, kind of bumped the score back up a little bit. It's a play on Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown, I know, duh. Millhouse's imagination brings the Great Pumpkin to life. However, the Great Pumpkin sees us killing all his pumpkin brethren and gets revenge. Lisa's like, "Well, if it's your imagination that brought him to life, maybe you can think of something that will kill him. How about Tom Turkey?" So Millhouse imagines Tom Turkey. Tom Turkey comes and attacks the Great Pumpkin, but then discovers that we eat turkey for Thanksgiving and starts going after everybody else. Revenge! I thought this funny because we do use turkeys as our Thanksgiving icon, but then we go ahead and eat the turkeys. But all in all, episode 19 only ranked, call that a 7. So it gets to go up to Lisa. Awesome. Time for the Double X episode. Number 20 starts out with our typical classic monsters coming to town, because they can go out on Halloween and it's okay, but they're called lamos because of their costumes. Go to another costume shop, crash the Simpsons Halloween party, but then their wives find out that they were cheating, also storm in, and yeah. But we get dial M for murder, or press pound to return to the main menu. Lisa gets upset at her teacher for not picking her, and winds up in detention. Bart talks Lisa into taking revenge on each other's teacher, so that nobody would be the wiser, because they're not in the class, so why would they be the ones pranking that teacher? Lisa ding-dong dashes Bart's teacher, but finds out that she was actually supposed to kill her. Lisa decides that she wasn't going to kill the teacher, so she tries to kill Bart instead. And through a series of events, actually accidentally does so. Though I didn't feel like this was very Halloween-y, I did end up giving it a 5. Don't Have a Cow Mankind, the new sandwich at Krusty Burger that uses cows that were fed cows, turns everybody into zombies. Except for Bart. He's immune. They try to take Bart to the safe zone in order to create a antidote, only to learn that the antidote that they have in mind is to eat Bart. Bart doesn't like this idea, so they come up with a new solution of just eating soup that Bart bathed in. This is kind of gross, but until that point it was a decent episode, so I ended up giving it a 6. There's no business like Mo Business. Springfield's doing a Sweeney Todd type play, and Homer falls into Mo's basement, and his blood gets into the beer, making it the best beer ever, and giving everybody a euphoric type feeling. Marge is tears for her lost husband reincarnate Homer, and he comes back and kills Moe. Wasn't a great episode, wasn't the worst. I ended up giving it a 5, bringing number 20 to just over a 5. Running out of room, but it's okay. It goes here. Okay, 21. We get War and Pieces, where Milhouse and Bart are playing a violent video game. Marge is like, hey, stop playing this violent video game. Let me show you these board games. They find one called Satan's Path, start playing it. All the other board games come to life, and we learn that the Oriental Express is where the prostitutes are. In order to get all the other pieces back in their own boxes, Bart and or Milhouse must get to the finish. The finish is actually Mousetrap, the game that always fails. Bart gets it to work, all is saved, and we're like, we'll just play Hangman from now on. And Hangman comes to life as well. Because I love games, board games, video games, etc., I ended up giving this episode an 8. Master and Cadaver. Marge and Homer take a cruise on uncharted waters. They find somebody on a lifeboat, take him in, learn that he was a cook on a business ship, and everybody died of poisoning and was knocked out. When he came to, everybody was dead. Homer and Marge kill the guy after thinking that he's the one that actually poisoned everybody on his boat. They find the boat in question, see everybody dead, but the person they found originally was on the boat, still alive. Homer kills him, finds out that everybody else on the boat was actually just kind of dead, mostly dead, had the antidote for the poison, and we're just in a deep trance. But they all came back to life. Homer didn't want any witnesses though, so he killed everybody. Marge couldn't live with the guilt, so she ate the poison pie. This episode only got a 5 from me. And we get Tweenlight. We get Shiny Vampire, comes to school, falls in love with Lisa, saves Lisa, and Lisa decides she wants to be a vampire forever. But then changes her mind when she finds out that she'd have to be 8 years old forever. But Shiny Vampire Boy and Father decide, no, you're going to do this. But Homer steps in and sacrifices himself for his little girl. However, he then kills the vampires with cholesterol. I found that the fact that she didn't want to be an 8-year-old forever, but yet she's been an 8-year-old for going on 36 years, 35 years. I thought it was funny. So I really enjoyed this segment a lot, and I ended up giving it an 8, which brings that 21, which brings it to a Lisa Awesome. Get in there, geeks. Stick with me. We're almost to the end. In number 22 for Treehouse, we have The Diving Bell and Butterball. Starts with Homer's point of view, where he is paralyzed because he find out that he got bit by a spider. But he can communicate with everybody through his farts. He then gets bit by a second spider that is radioactive and becomes a paralyzed superhero. This episode was okay. I think it would have been better if they would have kept it in Homer's point of view, except for his memories. But just didn't feel very like a Halloween, other than he was decorating for Halloween when he got bit by spiders. So I actually only gave that episode a 2. Dial D for Daddy. Ned goes around judging everybody in Springfield, then goes and prays with his Bible, where he thinks God tells him to start killing people. Turns out the Bible actually had a speaker in it, and Homer was broadcasting the kill commands. Ned finds out and tries to kill Homer. To try to piss Ned off more and to keep him off his back, burns the Bible, which causes God to come and kill Homer. But then the devil comes and bosses God around. I thought this was a funny episode and very Simpsons-like, and ended up giving it a 9. In the Navi, we have Krusty needing Hilarium, and you only get this from one specific planet. So the Marines are there trying their best to get this Hilarium for Krusty. And Bart in his wheelchair is able to possess the body of the alien form. While in his alien form, he falls in love with one of the natives who becomes pregnant. And so Bart must fight for his new love and planet. The planet helps defend against the Marines. And in the end, the aliens win. And the humans are sent away or killed. A little bit of both, I believe. We also learn that the Hilarium is actually secretions from the Queen. And then the humor of this episode is, if they would have just asked for the Hilarium, the aliens would have just given it to them. But they didn't, so now all the humans are dead that went to go get it in the first place. I really enjoyed this episode. Didn't feel quite Halloween-y enough, though, so I gave it an 8. Which brings Treehouse of Terror 22 to a little over a 6. So it also goes to the Homer. Treehouse of 23 starts with the Mayan calendar predicting the end of the world. And in order to prevent it, we must give it a sacrifice. So they go to fatten up Homer for the sacrifice. And in the end, Marge tricks Moe into taking Homer's place. And that is why we were saved from the Mayan apocalypse. We also get the greatest story ever told, where Professor Finks makes a particle accelerator that we don't think works, but it actually creates a small black hole. This mini black hole has a kind of a life of its own, and it finds Lisa, who takes it to her basement and is like, whatever you do, do not feed the black hole. It'll make it bigger and it'll destroy the universe, or at least our planet. However, nobody listens to this. They keep throwing stuff in. Homer even created a magic crap hole business that allows everybody to bring their crap to throw into the hole. It gets bigger and bigger till it sucks up Springfield. But when it finally sucks up Maggie's pacifier, it stops and goes away. The aliens on the other side enjoy all the junk that was sent over. I gave this episode a 7. It was kind of funny and enjoyable. In an unnormal activity, somebody has made a deal with the devil, and the devil wants its dues, and strange things are happening. So Homer buys a camera that he just happened to borrow from Ned without asking, and tries to capture what is happening. Turns out Marge had made a deal with the devil long ago when Selma and Patty summoned him, because they were bored teenagers, that if he would spare her sisters for 30 years, she would give them her favorite child. He comes, tries to take Maggie, and then Homer, in order to save Maggie, makes a deal with this demon and says, hey, I'll do whatever you want. Demon's like, 3-way? And Homer's like, okay, with me, you, and Marge? And the demon's like, no, with me and another demon. Homer is still okay with this, though. Ended up only giving this episode, or this segment, a 5. And Bart and Homer's Excellent Adventure. Bart wants a comic book that originally only cost 25 cents, but now is very expensive. So he goes back and he happens to find someone with a time machine. Goes into the time machine, goes back in time to buy the comic book. Reads it and throws it away, because, of course, that's what comic books are for. Reading, not saving. And while in the past, he finds his mom. He goes and meets up with his mom and accidentally convinces her not to go to the prom with Homer. When he returns to his present, he finds that his family's now rich. And he is now Barty Ziff instead of Bart Simpson. Homer also sneaks back in this time machine and finds the Homer of the present, and they come up with the scheme to go find the Homers through history. All the Homers through history try to take out Marty Ziff, but Marty wins. And Marge is doesn't like all this violence, which is actually the reason why she didn't want to go to the prom with Homer in the first place. So she falls in love with Homer again. I gave this episode a 6. I thought it was a good parody of Back to the Future. Didn't think it was too Halloween-y, so it landed at a 6, which averages out this episode at a 6 itself. In Treehouse of Terror 24, we get a glimpse at every single horror movie trope in existence. We get zombies, we get Hitchcock, we get the birds, a little bit of everything. And then we get the places you'll die. The Simpsons children have the mumps and cannot go trick-or-treating. The Fat and the Cat comes to solve this problem and goes around going to help the kids get candy, but ends up just killing a bunch of people and getting alcohol. Maggie ends up killing the Fat and the Cat, and the kids get candy, but once again have mumps again. It was a kind of fun Dr. Seuss twist. I ended up giving it a 5, though. Then we get to Dead and Shoulders, where Bart and Milhouse are flying a kite at the airport. Milhouse gets bored and goes home, and Bart's just enjoying the time flying his kite at this airport. She's like, well, there's no trees around here to tie off my kite, and I want to take a nap. So he ties the kite string around his neck. Plane helicopter comes, and the string cuts off Bart's neck. They are able, through the magics of medicine, attach Bart's neck to Lisa's body. But Lisa has control of her body, except when she's asleep. So Bart keeps trying to keep her asleep and kill her off while she's asleep so he can have the control of the body. Unfortunately, his plans backfire and both kids end up losing their heads, and Bart is attached to Aunt Selma and Lisa is attached to Krusty. Kind of feel like this should have been the other way around due to gender, but whatever. I didn't enjoy this episode as much. I only gave it a 3. It just didn't feel like a Halloween episode to me. And Freaks and No Geeks. Everybody's part of a circus. Marge is a trapeze artist and Homer is a strong man. And Bart is still attached to Selma. Homer and Marge are going to be married. We do learn that Moe has an emerald ring that Homer wants. So he plans to kill Moe, but that won't get him the ring. So he has Marge marry Moe so that he can marry, so that when he kills Moe, Marge gets the ring. And then Homer will then marry Marge to get the ring. The freaks find out the plan, end up killing Mr. Burns, the ringmaster, then tar and feather Homer, and then we get the ending episode of How I Met Your Mother. This episode kind of felt a little bit like a hot mess. Again, didn't feel like a Halloween episode, so I ended up giving it a 4. Giving this episode a 4 average. So it gets to go to the marginal low. And number 25. The aliens host this episode, and we get a glimpse at all the previous Halloween Treehouse of Terrors. We start this episode with the segment School is Hell, where Bart receives a permanent detention. He finds a desk with a bunch of runes. Lisa luckily has an app for that, translates it, and they find a portal to hell. And within this hell, there is a school for the demons and such. So Bart actually excels here. And after they find a portal back to Earth, Bart's like, I want to go back to that school. I am awesome in it. So he goes back and he actually graduates from hell. I gave this episode an 8. It was just fun seeing Bart in hell in his element. In A Clockwork Yellow, Moe, Homer, Lenny, and Carl are gangsters. But then Homer falls in love with Marge and wants to get out of that life, so Lenny and Carl also decide, well, maybe it's time. But then Moe gets beat up by the new beaters. He asks Homer for help and meet up with Carl and Lenny, who agree to also help. They invade a home of weirdo Richies and then end up getting beat up by the said Richies. I might have liked this more if I was a fan of Clockwork Orange, but it didn't float my boat, so I ended up giving it a 2. Which brings us to the last segment of number 25, The Others. The Simpson house is haunted. There's weird writing on the walls. Milkshakes magically appear. And the television only plays Married with Children. One of the ghosts try to get freaky with Homer. Marge gets upset about this betrayal in her marriage, kills herself. We find that the ghosts are actually the original animated Simpsons, with all the squiggly lines and how they were in season 1. Then Ghost Homer kills Homer for getting freaky with his wife. Bart pretends to kill himself by jumping out the window, and Lisa's like, "You're not leaving me here alone." So she jumps out the window and kills herself. Bart was actually in a tree, but then he falls to his death. This episode I really loved. It was kind of funny to see that the ghosts were the original Simpsons. And I thought this was a perfect Halloween episode. I gave it a 10, which helped this episode bring it almost to a 7. So we're just going to call it a 7 and put it in the least awesome. The end is near. Now in season 27, they actually have Treehouse 26 and they had another Halloween episode. But again, we're just going to stick with the Treehouse of Terror episode, where I believe we get a Courage the Cowardly Dog theme. At least that's kind of what it looked like to me. The first segment is called Wanted Dead Then Alive. Sideshow Bob lures Bart to the music room of the school by stealing Milhouse's phone. He kills Bart and then becomes a professor, but feels like his life no longer has any meaning and wants to continue to kill Bart. So he builds a machine, bringing Bart back to life so he can find new ways to kill him, over and over and over again. The Simpsons finally find Bart and are able to kill Sideshow Bob, and Bart reanimates him into a chicken freaky thingy, and Sideshow Bob goes back to teaching. This was kind of a cute, fun episode. Ended up giving it an 8. And they like making Homer into giant monsters, so they went with Homerzilla. And it tells the tale of Grandpa sending donuts to the creature of the sea to protect the island, while everybody else laughed at him. Fortunately, Grandpa dies, so the monster no longer got its daily donut. The executives love this story so much, they make a movie out of it, and it flops and flops and flops and flops every time they remake it. So they decide to throw the films in the sea for the insurance money. Though I thought this was funny, it just didn't feel very Halloween-y to me again, so I gave it a 3. The final segment in this episode was Telepaths of Glory. While hunting butterflies and owls, Lisa, Bart, and Milhouse find themselves in a hole with a bunch of goo. Lisa and Milhouse get powers from the goo. Bart not so much. Milhouse becomes mad with powers while Lisa tries to save the planet. And somehow Maggie has powers too and is able to use her powers to control Milhouse and save the planet. I ended up giving this episode a 6, which brings it to just almost a 6. It too gets to go to Treehouse of Terror number 27 is actually very special because it's not only a Treehouse of Terror episode, but it's also the 600 Simpson episode. We start out with Dry Hard. There is a drought, and all the water of Springfield is gone. Mr. Burns has the only supply left, so he holds a Hunger Games type event. Lisa is one of the children that is picked. Homer is her coach, that for some reason decides to join in on the Hunger Games and help her kill the other children. Lisa's like, hey, we have all these new fighting skills. We can take out Mr. Burns. So goes out and does so. They break the reservoir of water, which causes it to actually rain, which causes flooding and then an ice age. I like this episode, but again, it did not feel Halloween-y at all, so I ended up giving it a 2. BFF RIP, all Lisa's friends and everybody that says that they are going to be her new best friend die. Lisa gets arrested for these murders, but it's okay, Bart breaks her out. And we discover that it was actually Lisa's imaginary friend causing all the murders and wanting to kill everybody that Lisa loves so that she can become her best friend again. Homer's imaginary friend, the hot dog soldier, general, I don't know, tries to help and kill Lisa's imaginary friend Rachel, but fails and Rachel throws him in the microwave. Lisa's finally able to imagine Rachel old and with children and all these other things, and that helps make Rachel go away because she doesn't want all this and decides that she'd rather just go away and no longer be friends with Lisa. Homer tries to eat his imaginary friend, who is still alive, but Homer's just like, I don't care, I'm still gonna eat you. This was kind of a funny episode. I gave it a 6. And finally, that brings us to Mofinger. Bart discovers that his dad was a secret agent long ago and joins the organization to become an awesome agent. They then discovered that Homer was not really actually dead, but was now a supervillain. The fun thing about this episode is all the spies had alcoholic code names. Bart ends up killing Homer to save the supply of beer in the world. Again, not a very Halloween-y type episode, not even remotely spies. So I ended up only giving it a 2, which brings that to about a 3 average for the year. So it goes into the margin low. In Treehouse of Terror number 28, we get a 3D intro where all the Simpsons are candy, and they are able to weasel their way not to get picked and eaten by the kids, so they get put up on the high shelf where they will be forgotten forever. We get The Exorcist. Homer orders a ancient statue off of Amazon. He didn't really know what he was getting, and it possesses Maggie. They end up getting an exorcist who repels the devil 3 times, and then Pazuzu, the demon inside, escapes into Bart. But Bart is so evil, he decides he really can't handle staying in there, so he exorcists himself and leaves. I really enjoyed this episode. I ended up giving it an 8. And then that brings us to Cora Lisa, where Snowball leads Lisa into a mini door that leads her to an alternate reality of yarn people with button eyes. She really enjoys this family. They enjoy jazz. It's great, but she didn't want to have button eyes, so she tries to go back home, where Homer had just killed a snake with her saxophone. She can't take it anymore, so she goes back to the other world. Bart has promised Lisa's homework since Lisa's now gone, but he doesn't like this plan, so he goes into this world as well. And soon, the whole Simpson family is over there. But then they decide to all go home, including the ones that were originally in the 3D world. I ended up giving this episode a 6. It was cute, but wasn't quite great. That brings us to Homer. Everybody goes away for the weekend, so Homer's enjoying eating everything in the house until he runs out of food. So he finds a frozen hot dog in the back of the freezer, goes to cook it up, and while cutting up the hot dog, he accidentally cuts off his finger on the grill. He discovers how delicious he is. He ends up eating himself. And I'm fine with cannibalism episodes, but eating yourself just made my stomach turn. So I ended up giving this one a 1. I didn't enjoy it. But that brings our Treehouse 28 to a 5. Puts it about right there. We're almost done, guys. Cthulhu is in the intro to number 29 and ends up losing an eating contest with Homer. So Homer and the family get to have Cthulhu soup. Yum yum. But we get intrusion of the potty switchers, where Steve Jobs is dead and is replaced by a Groot-like alien. The Groot-like aliens spread spores through Springfield, but nobody really notices. They're busy playing on their phone. The spores encase the humans and replace them with alien spawns. It's okay because the consciousness of the humans are then transported to the aliens' homeworld, where they can enjoy utopia without technology, because we must destroy technology before it destroys us. I did enjoy this episode, so I gave it a 7. In Malta Lisa T, we find Bart, Nelson, and Milhouse in a jail cell. Turns out Lisa has multiple personalities because Bart had changed her answers on her test and got an F, causing her perfect record to be destroyed. I ended up giving this episode a 6. It was okay, it just wasn't great. And finally we have Geriatric Park, which is a play on Jurassic Park. But this time, Mr. Burns splices the DNA of dinosaurs with the elderly, which is okay until the heat is turned up. Then they all turn into dinosaurs. But Lisa talks to Grandpa before her family is eaten and tells him that she wants to listen to all his stories and complaints. And it makes him turn into just a friendly dinosaur. This episode I gave a 5. Didn't quite feel Halloweeny enough, but it felt fun. And that brings us to a 6. And then we come to a very special episode, the Triple X episode, which is also the 666th episode of The Simpsons, where in the intro we not only get all 30 episodes of Treehouse of Terror, but we also get clips of all 666 episodes of The Simpsons. For this episode we have Danger Things, a play on Stranger Things, where Bart and his friends are playing E.T., the video game. Milhouse on his way home gets abducted and gets transported to a alternate dimension. Lisa goes to the over-under dimension to try to save Milhouse and discovers that she has psychic powers there. Homer is now working there because Mr. Burns accidentally opened up a portal, and so Homer needs to destroy the monsters to protect the nuclear plant. Now that they are in the over-under, they are stuck there forever. Although I do not enjoy Stranger Things, I enjoyed this episode and gave it a 7. In Heaven Swipes Right, Homer chokes on a hot dog at a football game. When he finally gets to heaven, he finds out that God has sold heaven to Google, and that Homer wasn't supposed to die, at least not yet. So they give him the opportunity to go into a body of someone that was supposed to die in the next 24 hours anyways. He's tried several different bodies to appease Marge and ends up in Moe's body. Again, it just didn't feel very Halloween-y to me and needed a little bit something more. I ended up only giving that one a 4. When Harry meets Slimy, Selma has lost her job at the DMV and has become a custodial worker. She's cleaning the plant and decides to go get a cigarette in the restricted area, where she finds Kodos. They fall in love, and Selma talks Homer into helping him escape. Patty tries to talk Selma into not going on the spaceship with Kodos, and then falls in love with Kron. So both leave on the spaceship. I gave this episode a 5. I thought it was cute, but it only deserved a 5, which brings each one to just under a 5 for the year. Down to our last 4 geeks. To start off Treehouse of Terror 31, Homer misses his vote, and because of this, the Earth is destroyed. And we start with a 3D episode of Toy Gory, where Bart is destroying all his toys before he collects them to donate to charity. Marge then buys him a new radioactive man with real radiation. He ends up killing Radioactive Man in the microwave. So during the toy funeral, the other toys decide that they've had enough and go to kill Bart. But not just kill Bart, replace all his human parts and make him a pull-string toy. This segment actually got an 8 from me, till we got into the Homerverse. In this episode, Homer ate all the candy he was supposed to bring home with him for trick-or-treaters. So he goes to try to find a vending machine, and instead discovers transdimensional this machine, which brings 4 homers back to our Earth. These 4 homers decide to go on a eating binge and eat everything except for the salad. So Homer finally decides to send everybody back because they start glitching. And Mr. Burns is there to stop him from destroying his transdimensional machine because it creates a bunch of free workers for him and calls forth Mr. Burns from other dimensions. Mr. Burns attacks and then decides that things weren't going his way, so he ends up destroying the machine himself. I gave this segment a 5. B9, rewind. On Lisa's 9th birthday, she keeps getting killed. Nelson also keeps getting killed, and they must work together to figure out how to stop this time loop. They tried every other time loop in other movies, Groundhog's Day, where you just have to be nice, Star Trek, where you have to save the whales, and many others. And in the end, they just had to kill Nelson's stepdad, Gil. Lisa finds that it's okay to be 9. I gave this episode a 5, which brings number 31 to a 6. For number 32, Bong Joon-ha's This Side of Paradise, where the Simpsons are even poorer than they normally are. Bart gets a job as a tutor for a rich family, and then is able to get the rest of his family jobs with this family. When the rich family goes on vacation, the Simpsons house sit. While house sitting, Milhouse's dad, who was recently fired, comes to get to the secret living area underneath the house, where all the people of various social classes were hiding out and living in harmony. But then fighting breaks out between all of these people. Everybody dies, break most of the architecture in the area. In the end, the Simpsons are now living in the house that they were house sitting, but it's kind of broken down. This episode did not appeal to me very much. I only gave it a 2. Nightmare on Elm Street returns to the treehouse that the original episode actually told the tales in. The kids are telling stories. Lisa and Maggie get too scared and run and interrupt Homer and Marge's special time. This frustrates Homer, so he goes to chop down the tree. The tree comes to life to fight back, then creates an army of living trees. The trees go on a rampage. Citizens try to take them out, but then they spread their pollen everywhere. The trees win. The end. I thought this was a great episode. I actually gave it a 7. And then we get this extra segment where a narrator discusses all the months that Bart and what he did naughty that month, and then Maggie kills the narrator. Or this segment only got a 2, and actually brought down this season's average, but ends out with the dead ringer. Everybody that watches a certain TikTok dies within 7 days. We learn that this TikTok contains the soul of a child that had died at the school years ago in a well. Nobody noticed that this child was dead because nobody was her friend. So now she must kill everybody else to invoke her revenge. Lisa's like, hey, you just want a friend? I'll be your friend. And then Lisa gets too clingy, so the ghost girl returns back to her well. This segment for me was okay. I give it a 5. But as a whole, number 33 only got a 4. So it gets to go to the margin low section. Treehouse of Horror 33 didn't have much of an intro. It was just a book opening. And starts with the story of Pookadook, where Marge is getting Maggie ready for bed and is going to read her a book. And the Pookadook book really wants to be read. So Marge starts reading it. Crazy things happen. So Marge ends up trying to burn the book, but the smoke from the book go into Marge and possess Marge. And the book feeds on all her pent-up aggression. But it's okay. Maggie saves Marge in the end just by showing Marge that she loves her mom and appreciates her. I thought this was a great play and very Halloween-y. I actually gave it an 8. Then we get the anime of The Simpsons, Death Tome, where Lisa finds a book that if you write a name and how a person dies in it, that person will die that way. She first kills Jailbird for trying to keep a famous cat hostage. She then destroys Mr. Burns and all the board members that are trying to destroy the Earth. Bart turns her in, and Lisa ends up killing the demon in order to make it so she doesn't have to kill Bart. And in turn, turns into a demon herself. I thought this episode was a lot of fun, and gave it an 8. Final episode of 34 is The Simpsons World, where we learn that the Simpsons are actually robots that are at a theme park. Homer has errors and is needing to be repaired. While waiting for his repair, Homer discovers that he is a robot and tries to save his family and escape this world. They end up escaping and they think they're in the real world, but they're really in the Bob Burger world. I really enjoyed watching this episode, though it wasn't very Halloween-y. It's still, I thought, was really well done, and ended up giving it a 9. So we're going to put number 33 into Barterific. But there you have it, geeks. We have ranked all the Treehouse of Terrors to date, and the middle seems to be where most of them are. They're not masterpieces and works of art, but they're fun. What do you think? Have you watched all the episodes of Treehouse of Terror? Which ones are your favorite? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time. Later, geeks!